So it's good to see you all here. Thanks so much from throughout Kentucky, all you farmers and ag professionals joining us, and those even outside of our state borders. We're grateful that you've decided to spend this next hour with us. I am Jenny Howard Owen. I am the Farmer Education Program Manager for the Organic Association of Kentucky, and I'm joined today by three members of our farmer education team: Brooke Gentile, who's our executive director, Shannon Post, who is our farmer education program coordinator, and Marchal, who you'll meet momentarily. I'll start by sharing just a little bit about our nonprofit, the Organic Association of Kentucky. And after that brief intro and a little bit of additional resources, I'll pass the mic to Mad so they can get right into the primary content. We, Organic Association of Kentucky, also known as OAK, are a membership-based nonprofit organization. We have over 400 members who are farmers and local food advocates and allied professionals, all interested in supporting our mission and being part of that to advance organic regenerative agriculture, to improve the health of the environment and our communities. We're dedicated to growing ecological resilience, economic viability, and socially just futures for Kentucky farmers through education, technical and assistance, and market resources. So we do this through a variety of ways: farmer field days and annual conferences that bring farmers and supporters together to learn in community. We have a Find a Farm directory promoting member farmers throughout the state. We have production assistance that we offer to farmers who are out there in the markets and need just a little bit more assistance with their on-farm practices. We also offer assistance for organic transition, and we have a new project focusing specifically on climate smart agriculture, which we believe organic agriculture is always, and we can offer assistance in working with those conservation practices and building climate resiliency on their farms. So we'll share more information about keeping in touch with us as we move through this. And for those of you who have just joined us, we'll get into the content in just a moment. We are recording this event and we'll make it available to you, as well as a lot of other resources in your email after the event. So please submit any questions you have through the Zoom chat. So OAK does not operate in isolation. We have a rich network of partner farmers and organizations and agencies that support organic agriculture throughout our state. And we're grateful for the support of those partners, and specifically offer gratitude for today's event to one agency within the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. Their mission is to deliver conservation solutions so that agricultural producers can protect natural resources and feed a growing world. And as an organization formed by organic farmers to support each other in the growth of organic farming in Kentucky, OAK's mission focuses on advancing organic agriculture to improve the health of the environment in our communities. And so these two missions really align well together. And we're delighted to continue our work promoting NRCS's assistance to farmers throughout the state and throughout the country. Addressing these natural resource concerns through crop and livestock and forestry practices that mimic and work within natural systems of the surrounding ecosystem that the farm is a part of is what organically minded farmers do best, whether they're certified or not. And so we, through our farmer education programs, try to put as much information and knowledge into the hands of the farmer as possible. So we wanted to share a resource right off the bat that will allow any of you the opportunity to do your own research and to know where NRCS practices reside, and to remind you that these slides will be emailed to you with all of the hyperlinks and more information. So in order to meet those natural resource concerns of farmers and landowners, NRCS suggests and offers assistance on activities they call practices, which you'll learn more about, but could include cover crops or nutrient management or prescribed grazing. those practices have associated standards that define that activity in detail. And NRCS maintains a website that breaks down these practice standards state by state. It's called the Field Office Technical Guide, and it includes all the details that NRCS agents and the farmers they contract with will need to follow for successful implementation of those practices. We've also noted these practice standards by number throughout this presentation, like you see there for the cover crop. And those numbers will link to the Field Office Technical Guide in that PDF you'll receive after the event. So just wanted to offer you that resource and many more. And at this time, I am honored to pass the microphone to Mad Marchal, Oak's new Conservation Outreach Coordinator.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny, for that wonderful introduction and for getting us all oriented to today's presentation. I am very excited to be here with everyone today and to highlight this information that's really important to Oak and to farmers across the state and beyond. This information might be new to some of you today, and others of you might have a more intimate level of familiarity with NRCS and their programs, but I think there's something in this presentation for everyone. Even our guest farmers who are speaking later in this presentation have said that they've gotten something out of hearing the information that we're going to talk about today. So, and they've been through this program before. So if you have too, please stay with us and more will be revealed. Today's presentation, as you have seen when you registered for the event, is all about conservation, connection, and capital, bringing EQIP into your farm. So I will introduce EQIP to you. EQIP stands for the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. It is an NRCS flagship conservation program, and it addresses resource concerns through practice standards and conservation plans. It's also a cost share program, and we'll talk a lot about that later. As Jenny said, the NRCS works within natural resource concerns and works within these points to help to address resource concerns on farms for landowners and to help assist with practice standards that we will talk about. And also a poll is being launched on your screen to help you think about what resource concerns you might be interested in addressing on your farm. Yes, improving water and air quality. I'm seeing a lot of increasing soil health. Great. So in thinking about these resource concerns, we can start to think about who is eligible for EQIP. The eligibility for EQIP is really broad and inclusive. It really encompasses all working land. So that kind of covers anything that folks are growing, whether it be food, timber, flowers, aquaponics. If you're interested in conservation programs, you will want to come to NRCS with your resource concerns in mind, especially anything that is developed as you have spent time growing and producing food or whatever you're working on in your at your farm. So there is no acreage minimum or maximum for this program, and you can be a landowner or you can be a land tenant. You can be leasing land from a landowner. There are additional forms that it takes to apply for the program if that's the case, but it's you have complete eligibility still if you're leasing. The program is even open to urban farms, to smaller acreage, to community gardens, and you can be production-based. You could also be subsistence-based if you are not looking to go to market, but you still want to have a really abundant family-sized farm. This is still a resource that you can take advantage of. And again, we've highlighted the practice standards down there at the bottom that you will get the links to at the end. So what are practice standards, and what resource concerns can they address? This is a list, it's not exhaustive, of the practice standards that can be implemented through EQIP. So these are some of the things you can begin to think about when you are trying to address some of the resource concerns on your farm. You can consider what practice standards might meet those resource concerns. And addressing these practice standards and deciding which ones might be right for you is also something that NRCS field staff can assist you with once you form a relationship with them. There can certainly be more than one practice standard that you are looking to implement on your farm. And many times, a lot of these practice standards play together to create the orchestra that is a whole farm ecosystem. Even within the same EQIP contract, you can implement multiple of these practice standards. And we'll get into that a little bit more too. So what does EQIP not cover? EQIP does not cover infrastructure, on-farm infrastructure. It doesn't cover deer and pest fencing. It doesn't cover nursery greenhouses. So anytime you are growing something on a table or in a hanging pot, that will not be covered through EQIP. If you're looking to obtain a greenhouse through EQIP, you will be growing crops in ground to help address resource concerns for soil health and erosion. EQIP doesn't cover irrigation for livestock. It does cover irrigation for livestock, but you can't run water lines or have new water lines for crop irrigation. So the takeaway is ask your local NRCS field staff what they can cover and what they can't. This also varies from state to state too, so you want to make sure you're working with someone local. And once you get connected to them, you can talk about your specific goals. Also, sometimes it can be confusing. NRCS does not provide any of the labor for any of these conservation practices. They do offer technical assistance. So you will be implementing these practices on your own or contracting a third party to help you with these practices. The organic management practice standard. This is a brand new practice, and we're really excited to start digging into it with NRCS. Because it's brand new, it's an interim practice. So they are accepting applications for this practice, although certain things about it might shift as it's still an interim and being reviewed. The eligibility for this practice applies to land that is transitioning to organic. It also applies to certified organic land that's looking to take on new management practices. There is a multiple year payout for this practice as well. It pays for up to 5 years. And this is a great photo of Bar Farms and something that would be eligible for this practice, where they are growing rye cover crop in the middle of their cash crop there for a living pathway. The organic management plan is part of the requirements for the organic management practice standard. So on your farm, you will be looking to implement many of these practice standards or the ones that apply to your situation in order to be eligible for that additional payment through the organic management practice standard. Again, the organic management plan is developed through the USDA, and the standards under these plans are regulatory for organic certification. Great. So we'll just take a second to look at this lovely photo and kind of have a moment of reflection about your farm, about the folks that you are assisting to farm if you're in that position. We want to consider what it's like to grow a plant, something we are probably all familiar with. We can go to that place in our minds. This plant that we are growing has its own timeline. You can't necessarily speed up its growth or slow it down. Although certain practices might be able to adapt its speed, at the end of the day, it's working with the weather, the soil, and its own composition to go from seedling to full harvest. We have to yield to the timeline of the plant. While working with NRCS and EQIP, it can be helpful to adopt a similar mindset. NRCS is a well-oiled, long-running machine, and EQIP is a tried and true conservation program that has assisted countless farmers in land stewarding and creating abundant and adaptable farms. As we move into this next segment about our conversation from conservation into capital, a very charged word and conversation, we encourage you to hold space for EQIP to unfold and incorporate into your farm on its own timeline. So we'll take a look at the annual timeline cycle of EQIP, as you can see down here in this image. NRCS accepts applications for EQIP year-round, so you can submit an application whenever. There are varying contract lengths to each practice standard. So depending on the standards that you're implementing on your farm, you may have a 1-year contract or a 3-year contract, and the contracts go up to 10 years, although that's not frequent. The work for your practice standards starts after the completion of the contract. So after you've been offered a contract, you can then start the work for your practice standard. The dates each year aren't solidified months in advance. They kind of just fall around the same time every year. So this timeline that you see down here reflects annually, year after year, kind of where the certain time markers for the EQIP program fall. So the deadlines for the application to get the application into NRCS are announced in September, usually, or early October. And the deadlines fall early November. So last year, the deadline was November 3rd, and it will likely fall around the same time this year. Then, after you've submitted your application, the applications are ranked at the state level, and that happens each winter. So usually late December, early January. And then contracts are offered in late April, early May, usually. So each spring, early summer, the contracts are offered. And these are some examples of the practice payments that you might see for certain practice standards. So the payouts vary vastly from each practice standard, and they're calculated in different ways. So for a high tunnel, for a small high tunnel, so that's under 600 square feet, the payout per square foot of that high tunnel would be $9.80. The payout for a cover crop practice that is 1 acre or less, it's a flat rate, would be $406.19. And then anything over 1 acre, just for a simple cover crop, would be $62.34 an acre. For prescribed grazing, any practices that would fall under that, for 5 acres or less, it would be $168.91 per acre. And then for the pasture standard would be $35.66 per acre. And this is my favorite part, kind of, to get into these payments, because farming is such an incredible public service. And I really appreciate that the NRCS has been upholding these practices and this belief by contributing our tax dollars to farmers and growers and land stewards. So it can be a little daunting at first because all of the payment rates are different depending on what practice you're looking into. But this is where I really want to help folks break down what expenses they're going to be paying for, what labor they might be paying for, if they can do some of the labor themselves, and then to help them piece apart approximately how much they will be receiving and how much they'll be spending. Another note on this is that the payment rates are not solidified very far in advance. So you will know the exact payment rates the year that you will be implementing your practice. So if you were to submit an application tomorrow for cover crop practice, you would get approved in 2025, so in a year, and there would be a different, likely increased to adjust for inflation payment rate for that standard. There is also an entirely different set of payment rates that can be utilized by the historically underserved folks, any folks that fall into the historically underserved category. That's beginning farmers, socially disadvantaged farmers, veteran farmers, and limited resource farmers. The first 3 of these groups are self-certified, so there's no additional information that you need to provide to NRCS in order to fall into one of those 3 groups. The limited resource farmer will be verified through tax documents from the last 2 tax seasons. And we'll send out more information about what makes someone eligible to be a part of the limited resource group. And just a quick note on taxes, EQIP funding is a taxable income, so you will receive a 1099-G around tax season. And also, Farmers, if you don't know, may be able to deduct 25% up to 25% of gross farm income for conservation expenses, and EQIP would fall under that conservation expense. The other route you can go when you're receiving money from the EQIP program, you can receive it directly through a check or a direct deposit, or you can assign the payment to a contractor. So say you were getting a high tunnel installed, you might just want to assign that payment directly to the contractor to make their job easier, so they make sure they're getting paid in time. However, if you do that, you will still be liable for the tax income. You will still be taxed on that income. And NRCS will want to see an additional invoice from said contractor so that they make sure that they're not overpaying the contractor. If there were to be any remaining money that you would be receiving, it would go straight to you. Now that we've gotten through a lot of that capital conversation, I'm going to turn the mic over to Marianne Sharp. Marianne is an incredible resource conservationist with NRCS who has been working on the EQIP program for many, many years and has really helped it become what it is today. So we're really grateful that she's here with us right now. And I'll just give her a moment to introduce herself and to speak a little to EQIP. Marianne.
Thank you, man. I tell you what, those are big shoes to follow because she done an amazing job. That's probably one of the better presentations on our programs that I've heard from a non-NRCS person in a while. So she's done a good job. My name is Marianne Sharp. I have worked with NRCS coming up next month on 32 years. I was raised on a beef cattle tobacco farm here in central Kentucky. Went to Morehead University from a college. And right before I actually got out of college, I picked up a summer job with soil conservation back then. And when I got out of college, they offered me a full-time job, and I've never missed a paycheck since. So it's been a very rewarding career and an interesting career. But the first part of my career was working in field offices on the farms with landowners and ag producers. And then the second half of my career has been more working with contracts and handling the money and that sort of thing. So I'm coming to you today as an detailed to our state office in our program staff. So that's kind of how you ended up with me today. But really, all I wanted to reiterate on what Matt had already talked about is EQIP is for any landowner or producer. You don't have to own land. You can rent land. It just requires a little bit more paperwork when you sign up for programs. But the other part of eligibility is being an ag producer. It's not something that we can get you into ag operations or production, but you've already got to have some type of ag production to be eligible. A big key is addressing resource concerns on the land. And you don't have to participate in EQIP or any of our other programs. We are here simply to provide technical assistance if that's all you really want. It doesn't have to come with the money either, but the money side's a good part of it too. So I just didn't want you all to think that, you have to sign up for a program. You can call us. We'll come out and visit with you on your farm and just give you some ideas and some good technical assistance. So, and that's free of charge. So that's another side of what we do. Unfortunately, money and funding sometimes, programs is what drives our paycheck sometimes, but we do try to get in there and help when we can just on technical assistance alone. The other thing, yeah, we have practices for cropland, for pasture, for addressing woodland resource concerns. We also help with wildlife if that's an emphasis that you want to target. Also, it's usually not the primary, but most of the time a secondary approach to your concerns. The I know Matt's going to cover more of the application process. That probably is the biggest hurdle in our programs is when people walk in the door and trying to hit the right time of year and doing all the paperwork and knowing where to go. And she's going to cover that later. So I'll definitely jump back on for Q&As. It is confusing, but we try our best to help everybody as much as we can. We do have a presence in every county, whether it be an actual service center or a delivery point. And if we don't have an actual office, we usually work out of the conservation district offices. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Like I said, I'll be back on for Q&A at the end, and I don't want to take any more time from Mad because she's got a really good presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Marianne, so much. Yeah, we can talk more about where to find folks too at the end. Right now, we're going to jump to our wonderful farmers that have also joined us today, and that's Cortney Moses and Paul Dengel from the GoodThymes Organic Farms. I will let them introduce themselves and their farm. Cortney and Paul, take it away.
Hello, thank you guys for having us. I'm Cortney Moses.
I'm Paul Dengel.
So we are located in Williamsburg, Kentucky. That's Whitley County. It's southeastern Kentucky. And we have been farming together for 9 years, and we've been certified organic for 10 years. We focus on heirloom tomatoes, mixed vegetables, and year-round production. We do indoor and outdoor production with minimal tillage. We have farmed up to had 3 tunnels in production, but currently we're just doing 1, and we have 1 on the way.
Like a baby.
Yeah. So we sell to local farm-to-table restaurants here in Whitley County and Macquarie County. We do the Knoxville Farmers Market in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we have sold to local schools, and we do the local farmers markets. Next slide, please.
So why EQIP? So I got my undergrad in sustainable agriculture from the University of Kentucky, and the lovely redhead on the first slide was Dr. Krista Jacobson, and she was my advisor, and she did a lot of research on high tunnels. So that was kind of my exposure to it, and I mean it was awesome. I mean she was just dropping knowledge on us every day in class about, the production possibilities inside high tunnels. And another reason why EQIP, who doesn't love free money? These, being able to afford, it'd be really hard to, starting out farming and trying to buy a high tunnel. And then, so the application process, anytime somebody asks me about high tunnels, the first thing I tell them is, get a farm number. Go to your farm service agency, get a farm number. Because without that, you're dead in the water. I mean, you can't even think about applying for anything. So when we first, we didn't own our land.
No.
At the first place we were, my first high tunnel was at my parents' place. And then Corey's first tunnel was on her aunt's property. And so we were still able to get, high tunnels at these locations.
Yeah, I worked, luckily she was a family member, so I was able to work with her, get a farm number. And then now we got new property that we own, and that farm number just came with us to this farm, which was no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Practices.
So the EQIP practices that we use are we got the high tunnel. Micro irrigation was a no-brainer for us. We use drip irrigation as it is. And then the rainwater catchment has been really beneficial. Last year at the beginning of the season, our well burnt out, and we were able to use the water catchment to irrigate our tunnel, and it's like we didn't miss a beat. Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so when I first heard about tunnels, people were saying there's no weeds in tunnels, and that was completely wrong. That was probably the biggest learning curve, and something that we're still managing today. We're getting like better at is like weed control. Um, yeah, so we do a lot of mulching. We use a lot of fabric mulch. We mulch with grass clippings, and now we've got it kind of figured out. Um, and this picture down in the lower left-hand corner, it looks really beautiful, but that was a huge failure.
It is. Looks awesome, but it's do not do that. That's so much wasted space.
So we were every year. I mean, we're still learning, but it's definitely been worth it. Control variables.
So yeah, one of the things that we love about growing in high tunnels is you're able to control your variables. Weather comes at you, and it can, you can get poured the rain on, and the winds, protecting from the winds. Growing, we use shade cloth a lot, so to protect the tomatoes.
Yeah, it'll be cooler in the tunnels in the summer than with those shade cloths.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing about growing inside. I've heard, people in Europe talking about like, why would you grow vegetables outside? It's just, yeah.
So yeah, and soil health is something that's always on our mind. We're always thinking about it and trying to work on it. And you got to think like, if you're not irrigating your tunnel, it's a desert in there, and you're killing your all your organisms and stuff. So you even like with outside, you don't want to leave your soil uncovered. You always want to keep it protected and keep it moist. And that's something that is challenging in the tunnels.
Yeah, with soil health also is, where you don't have the elements hitting them, worrying about erosion, we're building up and not really taking away from very much because, the not being exposed to the elements is
huge.
It's great.
Okay. Okay, so conservation is a huge thing. I mean, we're conserving groundwater. The crop health is just 10 times better. I mean, like I said, we focus on heirloom tomatoes. So if anybody's tried to grow heirlooms outside, you know that it's almost impossible. We graft our tomatoes, our heirloom plants, but they're never getting hit with water. So we can harvest, a Cherokee Purple or something like that, and it can sit in room temperature for 2 weeks. Like it
versus turning to mush, within the first 5 days.
Yeah. And we can grow stuff in there that we normally couldn't. We can grow celery, we grow ginger.
We once did a row of heirlooms outside next to our tunnel, and we didn't get a single marketable tomato off of it versus we were flush with tomatoes inside. So the impact on, the environment, I mean, if you can, how many acres would it take to get, marketable heirloom tomatoes versus what you can actually get inside of a tunnel? I mean, it's just huge. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, we don't even fill our tunnel completely up with tomatoes, and we still have plenty. A lot. Yeah, and then they talked about the quality, but the management, management is everything, and that's something that we've learned over time, and we've figured it out enough to where like it works for us. And do you want to talk any about management?
I mean, it's more intensive,
it is.
I mean, you got to make sure that, right before this right when this started, I had to, sun popped out. So
you rolled the tunnel up.
I had to run outside and go roll the tunnel up and open up the doors. So, there's that, but those things can be automated. It's a little bit pricey to do that, but
Yeah, we both have full-time jobs, and thank God that they're flexible, that we can be here in case, got down when it frosted the 2 nights. One of us were able to stay here until it warmed up and to open up the tunnels. But one thing about lifestyle too is, having these tunnels, like you said, we wouldn't probably be farming like we are without these tunnels. And it's allowed us to have time to, spend with our children, go bicycle riding, and, incorporating them into this lifestyle too, that we love so much and we want to do,
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, EQIP. That's it for us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Courtney and Paul, so much. Thank you for the bike pictures and for sharing that a really big part of your life with all of us. Really appreciate it. At this time, if there are any other questions that you want to put into the chat, please do. We have some good questions formulating that we'll get to in a minute. If you do want to get in contact with Courtney and Paul and GoodThymes Farm, you can find them at that handle on the slide there. And then we will talk about finding your local NRCS service center right now. Just wanted to highlight the first 3 steps that if you have not spoken with NRCS, if you have not thought about EQIP much, that you might want to get into after this call today. So first, it's always helpful to, again, identify those conservation concerns, farm goals, maybe begin to think about the practice standards if that's the place that you're at. And then you can connect with your NRCS service center. And then also, as Paul was saying earlier, you'll want to get a farm serial number. So we've kind of talked about that first one. And again, you want to be thinking about that. And that's also something that field staff is there to assist you with. So you can continue that conversation with them. And of course, you will be exploring all of those practice standards throughout this whole process. Then you can connect with your NRCS service center, and we'll be giving you the link to do that as well. You can schedule a visit for them to come out to your farm. They can help you with a conservation plan, and you can begin to work on conservation program applications. That includes EQIP. And then number 3, last but not least, certainly you will want to visit the Farm Service Agency, the FSA, and look into getting a farm serial number and FSN. So those are the required documents that you'll need to do that. And you can take those documents with you the first time when you go to their offices. They are housed in the same office as NRCS, although they are totally different agencies. They are, of course, used to working together and to sharing information, but they do have separate record-keeping systems. So although you may have spoken to NRCS, you will need to give similar information to FSA and vice versa. The first time that you go in to get a farm serial number, there will be a bit of paperwork, about 20 pages more if you are applying as an entity with multiple individuals. So you'll just want to allot the right amount of time to kind of go through that at length and make sure that you're set up in their system. And then they'll get back with you with your farm serial number. So at this time, just curious if you feel comfortable coming on screen and kind of giving us a temp check about how confident you feel taking next steps. You temp check, yes, you feel really confident, you feel sort of confident, but you need more info, not feeling super confident, or maybe you're confused about something that we can address in Q&As. Cool. Well, if you would like someone to continue to give you more guidance after this point, I am very happy to do that. I'm working on this equity and conservation outreach program with NRCS and Oak. And I'm happy to support you in all of the minutia and all of the big picture questions that you might have around any of their conservation programs. We're going to have additional webinars such as this one. We'll have conservation chats that fall sort of before important deadlines so that you can make sure you have all of your papers in order. We can always do a one-on-one call if you'd like to do that with me. And then we'll have an upcoming conservation webpage where you will be able to find this recorded resource. And we will have some upcoming field days as well. Great, and these are our upcoming field days. This is one of our favorite ways to share information through these peer-to-peer farmer field days. We've just released the ones that you see here, and registration for them will be open in June and July. And then we're going to be adding more field days to that list soon. And you can see those on the coming soon at the bottom of the slide there. Our field days are open to anyone, farmers, ag professionals, folks that are just getting started. You do not have to be certified organic or have a membership with us. So everyone is welcome to those field days. And please keep in touch with us. If you can take a couple of minutes to complete a survey that we will prompt you with in a second, that would be great. You can keep in touch with us through membership. We offer multiple different levels of membership for farmers and supporters to join and take advantage of discount event pricing for field days and to our annual conference, discounts to popular farm supply retailers, and the other rewards of being part of our incredible community of farmers and food system change makers. And you can also stay in touch through the field days, through our other programs, and memberships again. We also have e-newsletters that come out monthly with organic farming updates that are relevant to what farmers in our area are going through, and that also list other regional events and resources. And of course, we have a print news that is a once annual pamphlet that comes out in the late fall, early winter, and our social media. You can follow us there. Okay, I would love to move into some questions with you all. So we have a question from Sue Churchill for some clarification on new water lines and irrigation. Marianne, would this be something you would like to speak to for a moment?
Yeah, that's fine. What that means basically is, in order to be eligible for the micro irrigation practice in association with a high tunnel, is you have to have irrigation history on your own already. So that basically means you would already have to have a water source there at the farm in order to be eligible for the micro irrigation. So we can't do there again. That's kind of one of those things where you've already got to be set up pretty much in the operation, being able to irrigate already on your own and have history of that 2 out of the last 5 years before you'll be eligible for the micro irrigation. So that's kind of where we get into no new water lines per se. I hope that kind of helps answer that. We can do the micro irrigation system, but and any water lines associated to that. But to set you up with, running water from a meter, we can't do that. Now we can do that for livestock. I know it's just enough difference that it gets confusing, but
that is clear though. Sue, please follow up with me if you have any more questions about that. Dave also wants to hear more about the Living Pathways program. So that's something that could be included into the organic management practice standard. And Dave, we can talk more about that if you're eligible for that, or if there are things we can do to increase your eligibility for that. Yes, and also you can use the cover crop practice standard for living pathways as well. So you could just apply for the organic cover crop practice standard, and that would help pay for the seed that you would use to implement living pathways. Also, yes, great point. Equipment was not on our does not cover list. Equipment is not covered through EQIP because it doesn't directly deal with those conservation concerns. Marianne, do you want to say anything else about that? Equipment?
No, other than unfortunately that's part of, an operational type expense that we just can't get into. Yeah.
David Neville asks that high tunnels you see high tunnels are practiced through EQIP, and you're in Henry County, eligible for this practice. So I guess the question is, are Henry County producers excluded from EQIP high tunnel practices because there have been some, David is maybe had some complications going through the application process. So I guess, Marianne, could you speak to why some applications might not be selected or offered a contract, and why some are? And maybe speak to the process too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The first couple of years that we offered the high tunnel, it was a national initiative that came out, and we really didn't have a lot of interest. So, you had a really good chance of getting funded in the beginning. Now that it has, widespread everybody, we get a lot of applications for high tunnels. And that's what happens with our programs. Once the word gets out on a practice and there's a whole lot of response to that, it gets competitive quick. I noticed in the chat he had mentioned something about a whole bunch being funded out in the Louisville area. Louisville has a special project just for high tunnels. So a definite, a percentage of our money right off the top went specifically to that special project. And we have those around. We have some up in Eastern Kentucky as well. So unfortunately, if you're in one of those areas of a special project, the chance of getting funded is a little bit higher. And I don't believe Henry County has any type of a special project for high tunnels. So unfortunately, that does happen sometimes. We tell people, talk with your NRCS person, see if there's any things that, you can change about your application. I know one thing, the micro irrigation is a popular practice to go hand in hand with the high tunnels. But it is a competitive program. And unfortunately, not everybody, we just don't have the funds to cover everybody. Keep trying. That's what we tell you. Sometimes it may take a couple of years to get in.
Yeah, and David, I'm happy to look at that with you. If you want to reach out, I would be happy to help steward that conversation with you and NRCS. Paul and Courtney, we are wondering, I think you mentioned that in one of your high tunnels, you had the arrangement sort of done in a way that you said it wasted space. So would you say more about that path orientation and the path orientations that you use now, and what is helpful and useful about how things are operating now for you?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you just think about it, if you're going side to side, you're going to have a lot more walk paths. And then having one down the middle, I think we calculated we're only utilizing about it was just so it was between 50 and 60% of the square footage in there. And when you're dealing and growing in high tunnels, you're thinking like, how much money can I make per square foot? And if you're whittling into that with walkways, I mean, it's just
irrigation problems too.
Oh yeah, running irrigation off that, you're using
more emitters and
I mean,
it was all shorter. It was just
yeah, we did it. It was like one per hoop basically. So there's 22 hoops in a 96. There's 24, sections, but on the ends is dead space for getting around. And then so what's 22? That'd be 44 rows. And if you do 2 to 3 emitters per, that's like 130 emitters, versus 16.
and like doing the row covers too. You gotta cover, instead of covering 7 rows, you covering 14 rows. It's just way more inefficient.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, now that having all of our fabric mulch links and all of our row cover links the same, we get another tunnel, it's all going to be the same, and
it's all standardized now.
Yeah.
Cool. It looks like we have a couple of more questions, but I also wanted we're going to prompt a poll for you on your screen that if you want to answer would be wonderful in just a moment. And again, I just want to remind you that we have that survey that's linked in the chat. And if you have any more last minute questions, it looks like we still have a couple. So Mary Ann, maybe you could tell us if there is anything that would make an application more likely to be funded. I know we kind of already spoke on this, but it looks like we got another question about it from Sue Churchill. So
yes, that's a question we get a lot. And, without knowing the specifics of the farm operation and your resource concerns, it's really hard to pinpoint that in a setting like this. I do recommend that you reach out to your local conservationist and get them out there on your farm so they can evaluate, your operation and what you need. But yes, the more you can do for the environment, the better you're going to score. But we also want people to know that you don't have to have, bukus of practices and spend a lot of money to rank, high. It is set up for the small farmer as well. So to pinpoint an answer to that, that's really hard without being on the ground and seeing what your needs are and what your operation includes. So I know that's not a great answer, but a lot of variables there. And that's why it's good, to get us out there on your farm and have that visit, even before you consider an application. Sometimes this stuff takes a little bit of time, and, making a good plan is not something you do overnight.
Great, thank you. And then I think one more quick question before we all say goodbye. Can you provide some clarity on the prescribed grazing? So I know we showed that 5 acres or less, there's a certain amount for that. So is there an additional amount for if you're doing more than 5 acres?
Yes, you can, we can do prescribed grazing on the amount of land that you have, whether it's small or large. I mean, some of our payments can be, 100-acre grazing system or 200-acre grazing system. The payment rates are set because when you get into a smaller grazing operation, where you might have a pipeline and stock tank and fencing, it's going to be more expensive to do that on a small scale than it would be on 100, 200 acres. So the payment rate will reflect that. That's why you might see those a little bit more. Also, the intensity of the grazing. Are you rotating every 2 days versus every week? That can play a role into what our payment rates are.
Great. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please reach out to me, reach out to Oak if you have any more questions. would love to continue this conversation. So thanks to everyone, and we'll see you at our next event.